In June of 1933, the Los Angeles County Parks Department brought civilian workers into Griffith Park to clear dry brush during a heat wave. The fire moved faster than the clearing did. 29 men died in the canyon. Griffith Park has had millions of visitors in the decades since. The hikers who walk those trails have been reporting consistently and without coordination the sensation that someone is following them. The Colorado Street Bridge in Pasadena was completed in 1913. It is 150 feet above the Arroyo Seco. A woman in a long white robe has been seen near the railing after dark, still looking down into the water below, vanishing before anyone reaches her. This is the haunted history of Los Angeles. The Avila Adobe. Los Angeles, 1818. Don Francisco Avila built a thick-walled adobe beside the dusty plaza when the town was still small and Spanish voices filled the lanes. He was a wealthy cattle rancher, and his home showed it. Cool clay walls, wide rooms, and a shaded porch watching traders, soldiers, children, and carts pass through the young pueblo each day. The house did not stay only a family home. In 1847, during the Mexican-American War, U.S. Navy Commander Robert F. Stockton briefly used it as a military headquarters. Boots struck the floors, papers moved across tables, and the quiet rooms carried news of a city changing hands, changing language, and changing forever around it. By the 1920s, the old adobe was nearly lost, until preservationist Christine Sterling helped save it during the rebirth of Olvera Street. Yet some say the rescue came too late to calm the house. Visitors report heavy footsteps crossing empty rooms, like Don Francisco still checking the corners of the home he built long ago. Others speak of Encarnacion, his second wife, seen near the porch or felt in the master bedroom. Some describe a soft weeping sound, then silence, as if grief is caught in the walls. The story is gentle but sad. The Avila Adobe is not just an old building. The Curse of Rancho Los Feliz. Long before Griffith Park had picnic tables, trails, and city views, the land was Rancho Los Feliz, a wide estate of hills, brush, orchards, and cattle paths. In 1863, its owner, Don Antonio Feliz, died after an illness inside a changing frontier town. What happened next became one of old Los Angeles' strangest inheritance stories, told for generations. According to legend, the dying man's estate did not pass to his young niece, Doña Petronilla, but to a local politician instead. Some believe the will was suspicious, written while the household was in confusion. Petronilla, only about 17, was said to be furious and heartbroken. In the story, she cursed the land and those who had taken it from her. The years that followed gave the tale its power. Owners and families tied to the rancho faced money trouble, fires, illness, legal fights, and sudden misfortune. Later, Colonel Griffith J. Griffith bought much of the land, then donated it to Los Angeles in 1896. The city gained a park, but the old curse stayed in whispers through the hills. Even today, hikers in Griffith Park sometimes speak of a woman in white moving through the dark trails near midnight. She appears far off, then fades among the trees. Maybe it is only mist over the hills, caught by moonlight. Or maybe Petronilla still walks the land, watching a rancho that history took from her beneath the old oaks. The Pico House. Los Angeles, 1870. Pio Pico, the last Mexican governor of Alta California, opened the Pico House beside the old plaza. It was meant to prove that the young city could be grand. With 80 rooms, gaslight, an open courtyard, and fine details. The hotel stood like a promise that Los Angeles was ready to shine in the West with pride. For a short time, it did. Travelers, businessmen, and important guests passed through its doors, and birds once brightened the courtyard. But the plaza also sat beside a rough part of town where fights and fear could rise quickly. In 1871, nearby streets became the scene of the Chinese massacre, one of the darkest events in the city's early history. As the decades moved on, the Grand Hotel lost its glow. Newer neighborhoods pulled money away, and the Pico House became quieter, older, and easier to overlook. Yet old buildings do not always forget. Guards and visitors have reported footsteps, strange lights in the basement, and shadows leaning over the courtyard balconies after closing. The haunting feels tied to more than one person. It feels like the building absorbed the hopes and troubles of early Los Angeles. The Pico House began as a symbol of pride, then watched the city reveal both beauty and cruelty from its rooms. At night, its empty windows seem to hold every voice that passed through. The silence there feels crowded, as if the old plaza is still listening. The Displaced Spirits of Heritage Square. Heritage Square Museum looks like a quiet Victorian neighborhood, but it was built from rescued homes. In the late 1960s, preservationists moved old Los Angeles houses there to save them from demolition as freeways and new development changed the city. Among them were the Perry Mansion from 1876 and the colorful Hale House from 1887. That rescue gave the buildings a second life, but some say it also confused what stayed inside them. A house is more than old wood and paint. It has birthdays, arguments, footsteps, and last goodbyes. When these homes were lifted from their original streets and set beside strangers, many believed their memories came along, and old floors creaked after dark. Inside the Perry Mansion, people have reported sudden cold spots that feel out of place in warm Los Angeles air. At the Hale House, a spirit called Eliza is said to ask for help, as if she is still trying to understand where she has been taken. The grounds also carry sadder stories of houses lost to fire after relocation. That is why Heritage Square feels different from a normal museum. It is not one haunting, but many small pasts gathered together. The streets are artificial, yet the emotions feel real. After dark, the porches and windows can seem less like exhibits and more like homes still waiting for their owners. The Cecil Hotel. Downtown Los Angeles, 1924. The Cecil Hotel opened with marble, high ceilings, and a dream of welcoming travelers to a bright new city. It cost a fortune for its time and was built in a handsome Beaux Arts style near busy theaters, shops, and train traffic. At first, it wanted to be elegant, safe, and full of promise for a city chasing light. Then the Great Depression changed the blocks around it. Money disappeared, families struggled, and the hotel slowly shifted from a fine destination to a cheaper place for people passing through or trying to survive. Over time, the Cecil became tied to accidents, mysteries, sudden disappearances, and stories that made its name feel heavy. Part of its power comes from how many lives cross there. Tourists, workers, long-term residents, and lost souls all shared the same elevators and hallways. Some tragedies were real, others became rumor, and the building grew into a symbol of the darker side of downtown Los Angeles, where history and folklore often meet when the halls grow still. In recent years, the Cecil has been renovated and reused, but its old reputation never truly left. People still look up at its windows and wonder what the walls remember. It began as a hotel of hope, yet became a place where Los Angeles keeps some of its strangest modern ghost stories. The lights of downtown still glow around it, but the building feels like it is listening alone. The Hollywood Knickerbocker Hotel. Hollywood, 1925. The Knickerbocker rose near Ivar Avenue as a stylish place for people who wanted to live close to the new movie world. By the time it became a hotel, stars and dreamers passed through its lobby, hoping the hills above them would open a door. Los Angeles was selling glamour, and the Knickerbocker looked like part of the promise. But its most famous story belongs to Harry Houdini, even though he did not die there. The escape artist passed away in Detroit in 1926, after years of telling his wife Bess that if the dead could speak, he would find a way. They had a secret code only they knew, and Bess spent years trying to hear it from the other side. On Halloween night in 1936, she held her 10th and final seance on the roof of the Knickerbocker. Magicians, reporters, and friends waited as midnight came. A sudden storm rolled over Hollywood. Rain struck the roof, and the city seemed to hold its breath. No code came. At last, Bess blew out the candle and ended the search after 10 long years. That is why the hotel feels tied to both love and mystery. It was not a place of terror, but a place where someone asked the impossible question one last time. If Houdini could escape chains, tanks, and locked rooms, could he escape death itself? The John Sowden House. Los Feliz, 1926. The John Sowden House rose on Franklin Avenue like something from an ancient city. Architect Lloyd Wright designed it with concrete blocks and a dramatic front that many later compared to open jaws. Even in bright California sun, the home looked guarded, private, and strange, as if it was built to keep secrets behind its heavy walls. The house was first made for artist and photographer John Sowden, but its legend grew after Dr. George Hodel owned it from 1945 to 1950. Hodel was wealthy and connected to the darker side of old Los Angeles rumor. Decades later, his own son made serious claims about crimes inside the home, claims that remain debated and unproven. Police did watch the house in 1950 using hidden microphones during an investigation. Recordings and reports from that period helped push the mansion deeper into local mystery too. Nothing in the public story gives a clean answer, but the idea of voices caught inside that unusual basement has made the home feel less like a residence and more like a locked case file. Today, the Sowden House is still admired as a beautiful piece of architecture, but beauty does not erase unease. Its sharp shadows, narrow entry, and fortress-like face seem made for whispered stories. The Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. Hollywood Boulevard, 1927. The Hollywood Roosevelt opened across from the Chinese Theater, elegant and full of the new movie age. 2 years later, in 1929, it hosted the first Academy Awards in a small ballroom when the ceremony lasted minutes and Hollywood was still learning how famous it could become. The hotel quickly became part of the dream. Stars stayed there, deals were made there, and young actors crossed its lobby, hoping to be noticed. Marilyn Monroe lived at the Roosevelt early in her career, before the whole world knew her name. That is why one of the hotel's gentlest legends centers on a vintage mirror once linked to her suite, where guests have claimed to see her reflection. The Roosevelt has other stories too. In room 928, actor Montgomery Clift once practiced for From Here to Eternity, and later guests reported hearing a faint horn or bugle in the night. Staff have spoken of cold spots, empty elevators moving by themselves, and a little girl named Caroline skipping through the lobby in old-fashioned clothing before fading away. What makes the Roosevelt so haunting is that it still shines. It is not an abandoned place with broken windows. It is alive with music, guests, and cameras, yet the past seems to walk beside them. Grauman's Chinese Theater. Hollywood, 1927. Sid Grauman opened his Chinese theater on Hollywood Boulevard with towers, dragons, carved details, and a forecourt that soon became one of the most famous patches of concrete in America. Movie fans came to see premieres, spot stars, and place their hands beside the prints of actors who seemed larger than life. The theater was built for spectacle. Its opening drew crowds, bright lights, and the feeling that Hollywood had created a palace for its own dreams. Yet behind the red curtains and decorated walls, workers later told quieter stories. Some spoke of a phantom projectionist who still watched the booth, sometimes leaving the smell of old pipe tobacco behind him. Another legend tells of Fritz, a former stagehand said to move props when no one is near them. Heavy objects shift, curtains tremble, and empty spaces feel suddenly busy, like a show is being prepared for an audience that cannot be seen. In a theater, sound travels oddly, but staff say some noises feel too careful to be only pipes or settling wood. Outside, the forecourt carries its own strange rumor. After the tourists leave and the flashbulbs stop, some claim a lonely figure walks among the handprints, searching the cement as if looking for a lost name. The Chinese theater was made to preserve fame forever. That may be why its ghost stories feel so fitting. The Hollywood Pantages Theater. Hollywood, 1930. The Pantages Theater opened on Hollywood Boulevard as a glowing Art Deco palace. Alexander Pantages built it during the last grand days of vaudeville, when stage acts and motion pictures shared the same dream. Its lobby, metalwork, and ceiling details were made to impress anyone who stepped in from the street. The theater soon became part of Hollywood history. In the late 1940s, billionaire aviator Howard Hughes bought control of it and kept offices upstairs, watching business with the same restless focus he brought to planes, films, and machines. For several years, the Pantages even hosted the Academy Awards, adding more fame to its already bright name. But the building has a second reputation after the lights go down. During a major restoration around 2000, some workers reported seeing a man in old-fashioned clothes closely studying their work before vanishing. Because of the upstairs offices and the sharp, watchful manner of the figure, many connected the sighting to Hughes himself. There is also the story of a woman who died during a performance in the 1930s. Her spirit is said to linger in the auditorium, and workers have claimed that microphones sometimes catch a soft female voice singing when no one is inside. The Hollywood Sign Ghost. Hollywood Hills, 1932. The giant sign above Los Angeles still read Hollywoodland, advertising a hillside housing development more than a dream factory. Below it, young actors chased roles, rent money, and one lucky break. Among them was Peg Entwistle, a stage-trained actress who came west hoping the new movie capital would finally notice her. Peg had talent, but Hollywood was not gentle. She found small chances, then long waits, and the Great Depression made every door feel heavier. In September 1932, her life ended near the famous sign, turning a real tragedy into one of the city's saddest legends. The letters that once promised glamour became tied to loneliness and a quiet kind of warning. Since then, hikers near Griffith Park have reported a woman in 1930s clothing walking the trails below the sign. Some say she appears calm, almost lost, then disappears when someone calls out. Others remember a sweet gardenia scent in the air, a detail often connected to Peg, as if perfume lingers after the figure is gone. The story is not loud or cruel. It is a quiet Hollywood warning, the kind hidden behind bright lights and red carpets. Peg Entwistle became more famous in death than she ever was on screen, which makes the legend feel even sadder. When fog touches the hills, the sign no longer looks like an advertisement. It looks like a marker over a dream that broke on the hill above town after sundown. The Wildfire of Griffith Park. Griffith Park, 1933. The country was deep in the Great Depression, and many men took hard public work because any pay felt like hope. In Mineral Wells Canyon, civilian workers were clearing brush in the dry hills when a fire broke out. The Los Angeles sun, wind, and chaparral turned a small danger into a fast-moving wall of flame. The men were not trained firefighters. Many had shovels, wet sacks, and courage, but little protection. As the flames shifted, dozens were trapped in the canyon. At least 29 workers died, and the disaster became one of the deadliest wildfires in Los Angeles history. Griffith Park, already tied to old Rancho Los Feliz legends, gained a new sorrow. For years, hikers have told stories of strange sounds in the quieter parts of the park. Some speak of voices carried by the canyon when no group is nearby. Others describe sudden heat, then a cold feeling, or the sense that unseen men are moving through dry grass just beyond the trail. The reports often come near dusk. Some walkers stop, unsure if the canyon is answering. Maybe the sounds are wind, animals, or the way canyons bend noise, but history gives the place weight. Those men went into the fire hoping to stop it before it reached others, and many never came home. When Griffith Park turns orange at sunset, the hills can feel watched. The old brush grows back, but the echo of 1933 still seems to move through it. The Queen Mary, set sail. Long Beach, 1936. The Queen Mary first crossed the Atlantic as one of the grandest ocean liners ever built. Her decks were polished, her dining rooms glittered, and passengers stepped aboard as if entering a floating city. She was made for elegance, speed, and national pride and skill, carrying travelers between Britain and America in style. Then World War II changed her purpose. Painted gray and stripped of luxury, she became a troop ship known as the Gray Ghost. She carried thousands of soldiers across dangerous waters, moving fast to avoid enemy submarines. The same halls that once held music and fine dinners now held fear, duty, prayer, and tired men far from home. After retirement, the old Queen Mary came to Long Beach and became a hotel and museum. That is when many of her ghost stories grew. Guests have reported a sailor in the engine room, a lady in white moving through the ship, and the laughter of children near the old first-class swimming pool, where the air feels still and heavy, even when visitors pass. The Queen Mary feels haunted because she lived more than one life. She was a palace, a war vessel, and finally a memory tied to shore. Steel can rust, paint can fade, but a ship that carried so many hopes and goodbyes may never feel empty. At night, when the corridors quiet down, she seems less docked than waiting for one more voyage across dark water. The Hollywood Reporter Building. Sunset Boulevard, 1936. William Billy Wilkerson built a stylish Art Deco home for the Hollywood Reporter, the newspaper he had started only a few years earlier. Hollywood was growing fast, and the building became a place where deals, gossip, reviews, and careers passed through ink and typewriters before reaching the city in print by morning. Wilkerson understood the power of attention. A name in print could lift an actor, wound a studio, or turn a rumor into a headline. The office on Sunset was not just a workplace. It was part of the machine that made Hollywood feel watched every hour.
Don't go near the docks tonight.
Behind its clean lines, people argued over stories that could change lives overnight. Decades later, when LA Weekly moved into the old building, workers began telling stranger stories. One construction worker said he felt a firm push on his back while alone. Others heard sharp tapping late at night, saw figures in corners, or noticed shapes that did not appear in mirrors. as if someone stood there without fully joining the room. The haunting fits the building's history. Newspapers live on voices, deadlines, and things people do not want printed. Maybe the sounds are pipes, nerves, echoes, or old walls settling under Sunset Boulevard. But inside that former newsroom, silence seems unlikely. The place was built to listen, and some say it still does, holding every whisper Hollywood tried to hide after midnight. The echoes of the Colorado Street Bridge. Pasadena, 1937. The Colorado Street Bridge was already famous for its beauty. Built in 1913 with graceful arches over the Arroyo Seco, it looked almost too elegant for the deep canyon below. Cars crossed it toward Pasadena, and postcards showed it like a proud gateway. But during the Great Depression, its beauty carried a sorrowful shadow. The bridge became known for tragic falls, as desperate people came there in moments of hopelessness. One of the most remembered stories happened in 1937, when a mother fell with her young daughter. The child survived because thick branches below broke the fall, a detail so unlikely that many people treated it as both miracle and haunting. Over time, the bridge gathered reports that made the old sadness feel present. Night visitors have described lights failing without reason, a sudden chill over the walkway, and a woman in a long white robe near the edge. She is sometimes seen looking down into the dark arroyo, then vanishing before anyone can reach her in time. Today, safety barriers and restoration have changed the bridge, but not the uneasy name it carries. By day, it is a beautiful landmark. By night, the arches stretch like ribs over black space, and every passing car sounds far away. The mystery is not just who walks there after dark. It is why old sorrow seems to cling so tightly to stone, air, and the empty drop below, where the city lights fade away. The Pranksters of Syros. West Hollywood, 1940s. Before the building became the Comedy Store, 8433 Sunset Boulevard was Syros, one of the hottest nightclubs in Los Angeles. Movie stars, singers, gossip writers, and studio people filled the tables. Outside, the Sunset Strip glowed. Inside, fame laughed, drank, danced, and pretended nothing bad could touch it. Flashbulbs popped near the door. Everyone wanted a table. But Chiro's also had a rougher shadow. Stories tied the club to mob figures, backroom deals, and a basement where not every conversation was meant to be heard. The place was glamorous on the floor and secretive below it, which is why later workers felt the building carried two histories at once: applause above, whispers underneath. After the Comedy Store opened there in 1972, employees and comedians began telling odd stories. Chairs stacked themselves on empty stages. Tables set for the night were found disturbed. Some heard footsteps when the rooms were locked. Others claimed to see a frightened man in a World War II bomber jacket fade in and out near the dark corners. Maybe it is only an old building settling after decades of music and jokes, but the feeling is stranger than that. Shiro's was made for people who wanted to be seen, while the basement belonged to people who did not. At night, when the laughter stops, the old club seems to play one last prank, as if Hollywood's past is still testing the room. The Silent Movie Theater. Los Angeles, 1942. The Silent Movie Theater opened on Fairfax Avenue because John Hampton loved old films at a time when many people had already forgotten them. He collected silent reels, repaired damaged prints, and showed faces from an earlier Hollywood. Hampton did much of that work upstairs in the apartment above the theater. For decades, he guarded fragile film like treasure, saving pieces of movie history that might have burned, rotted, or vanished. To him, the theater was more than a business. It was a small temple for the first ghosts of the screen. He treated each reel like a rescued life. After his death in 1990, the building changed hands, and in 1997, a later owner was killed in the lobby. That real tragedy added a second shadow to the theater's story. People later claimed the haunting split by floor, Hampton upstairs, still watching over his films, and the later owner downstairs, pacing near the place where his life ended. The legend feels fitting because silent movies were already made of shadows, faces, and light. In a dark theater, the past never looks fully dead. It flickers. Montgomery Clift at the Roosevelt. Hollywood, 1952. Montgomery Clift checked into the Hollywood Roosevelt while preparing for From Here to Eternity. He was already known as a serious actor, the kind who carried a role inside him until it shaped his voice, walk, and eyes. For the film, Clift practiced military bugle calls again and again, trying to make the details feel true. Guests may have heard the sound drifting through the hotel then, not knowing they were listening to an actor chasing perfection. Hollywood looked glamorous from the lobby, but inside those rooms, art could be lonely, repetitive work. It was a quiet kind of pressure. Years after Clift was gone, Room 928 became one of the Roosevelt's best-known ghost stories. Guests reported a faint bugle in the middle of the night, sudden cold spots, radios turning on, and the feeling of someone brushing a shoulder when no one stood nearby. The stories did not feel violent. They felt focused, like practice continuing. The room kept the sound. That is what makes the legend sad and believable in its own way. Some ghosts are imagined as trapped by fear, but Montgomery Clift's spirit is said to be trapped by dedication. The Roosevelt remembers premieres and parties, but Room 928 remembers discipline. If you hear a note in the dark, it may be only pipes. The Los Feliz Mansion. Los Feliz, 1959. A large Spanish Revival mansion on Glendower Place became the center of a tragedy that shocked the quiet hillside neighborhood. The home had been built for comfort and status, with lovely rooms and a view of Los Angeles below. Then, in one terrible night, its beauty became tied to sorrow. After the deaths, the house did not return to normal life. For decades, it sat strangely preserved, owned but barely lived in, with rumors that furniture, clothes, and old household items had been left behind. Neighbors saw a grand home that looked frozen in time, as if the door had closed on 1959 and never truly opened again. That stillness made the mansion one of Los Angeles' great modern legends. People whispered about lights, shapes, and windows, and a heavy feeling near the property. Some stories grew larger than the facts, as they often do in a city that turns private pain into public mystery. Still, the silence of the house gave every rumor somewhere to live. The Los Feliz mansion is haunting because it does not need chains, screams, or shadows to feel wrong. Its power comes from interruption, a family story cut off, a house kept too still, a neighborhood forced to remember what happened behind those walls. Even now, the legend feels like a room no one wants to enter, with the past sitting quietly inside. The enduring spirit of Marilyn Monroe. Los Angeles, 1962. Marilyn Monroe died at 36, and Hollywood lost one of its brightest and saddest stars. She had lived many lives in public: model, actress, singer, symbol, and person behind the symbol. Her final resting place at Westwood Village Memorial Park became a quiet stop for fans who wanted to leave flowers, lipstick marks, and prayers. Marilyn's ghost stories are spread across the city because her real life moved through so many famous places. The Hollywood Roosevelt is often mentioned, especially the vintage mirror linked to her early stay there. Some visitors claim her reflection appears for a moment, not frightening, but soft and distant, as if she is still passing through a room. At Westwood, the legend becomes more gentle. People have reported a pale pink mist or warm presence near her crypt, especially when the cemetery is calm. No record can prove a spirit, but the story endures because Marilyn's memory feels unfinished to many. She was known by millions, yet often described as deeply lonely. That is why her haunting is different from the darker tales of Los Angeles. It is not about revenge. It is about longing. Fans still stand before her name and speak softly, as if fame did not protect her, but maybe remembrance can. The memory of Pigeon Goldie. Downtown Los Angeles, 1964. The Cecil Hotel had already become a place where tourists, workers, and long-term residents shared the same narrow halls. One of those residents was Goldie Osgood, a retired telephone operator known around Pershing Square as Pigeon Goldie. Each day she fed the birds and became a familiar, gentle face in a hard part of town. Goldie was not famous in the Hollywood way. She was known in the way neighbors know someone, by habit, kindness, and a regular place on the square. That made her sudden death inside the Cecil feel even colder. The case was never settled in a way that gave the city peace, and her name became part of the hotel's long, sorrowful record. Afterward, friends gathered flowers for her, and the story stayed alive because it felt personal. In a building full of strangers, Goldie had belonged to the neighborhood. Some people later said her presence still lingered in the hotel, not as something frightening, but as a quiet sadness near the rooms and corridors she once knew. The Cecil has many darker legends, but Pigeon Goldie's story feels different. It is not about glamour or shock. It is about an ordinary woman. The Santa Monica Pier Carousel. Santa Monica, 1975. The pier had already survived decades of waves, storms, money trouble, and changing tastes. The municipal pier opened in 1909, and Charles Louf's Pleasure Pier followed in 1916 with rides, music, and the Hippodrome. By the 1970s, the old amusement landmark looked worn, but locals still saw it as part of the city's soul. That decade nearly ended the pier's story. Officials considered tearing parts of it down, and residents fought to save it. Then, fire damaged old apartments and spaces tied to artists, drifters, workers, and night people who had used the pier like a strange village above the water. The flames fed a new layer of ghost stories. Security guards later reported party sounds coming from places where no party could be. Others spoke of shadowy figures near the carousel, or the feeling that someone had just stepped off a wooden horse and vanished. The current carousel, built in 1922 and moved there later, only deepened the old-time feeling beneath the Hippodrome lights after closing. The Santa Monica Pier is bright by day, full of tourists, salt air, and music. But after closing, when the ocean turns black below the planks, it feels older than its neon. Maybe the sounds are wind and loose boards, or maybe the people who loved the pier before it was saved still gather there. The Ghost of Victor Killian. Hollywood, 1979. Victor Killian was an actor with a face many people knew even if they forgot his name. His career reached from early stage work in old films into television, and he lived near Grauman's Chinese Theater, close to the heart of the movie town he had served for decades. Killian's life ended during a burglary in his apartment, and the case left a hard sadness behind. He had worked through the years when Hollywood moved from silent pictures to sound, then from studio glory into television. To lose him so violently near the famous forecourt made the old glamour feel suddenly thin and painful. Soon, stories began linking his spirit to the Chinese theater. Guards and visitors spoke of an elderly man in vintage clothing moving through corridors or walking near the handprints outside. Some believed he was searching for answers or simply returning to the area where so much of his world still seemed alive in cement and lights. The legend works because the theater is already a place of names pressed into stone. Victor Killian was one of many working actors who helped build Hollywood without always standing in its brightest spotlight. If a lonely figure walks the forecourt after midnight, maybe he is not asking for fear. Maybe he is asking to be remembered. The Ghostbusters House. Hollywood Hills, early 1980s. A house on Woodrow Wilson Drive sat above Los Angeles with a view of canyons, trees, and city lights. It had famous names tied to it, including Natalie Wood and Cass Elliot, and later Dan Aykroyd stayed there. In a city built on stories, the home already seemed ready for one more strange chapter. Aykroyd later spoke about strange experiences in the house, including odd movements and the feeling of an unseen presence. He was already interested in the paranormal, with family roots in spiritualism and ghost lore. But living inside a house with its own whispered history helped turn that interest into something bigger. Those experiences became part of the inspiration behind Ghostbusters, the 1984 film he co-wrote. The movie turned hauntings into comedy, adventure, and pop culture, but its seed came from a real fascination with the unknown. That makes the house unusual. Its ghost story did not only scare someone, it helped create one of Hollywood's most famous ghost stories. Maybe the home's legends are a mix of memory, celebrity rumor, and canyon atmosphere. Still, the idea is perfect for Los Angeles. A strange house, a famous actor, old Hollywood names, and a haunting that turns into a blockbuster. In this city, even a ghost can find its way onto a movie screen, then echo back into the hills, where the windows glow over Laurel Canyon after dark in the dark silence too. The Reawakening of the Roosevelt. Hollywood, 1980s. The Roosevelt Hotel had once stood for glamour, but time had dulled its shine. Opened in 1927 and tied to the first Academy Awards in 1929, it later fell into decline as Hollywood Boulevard changed around it. By the early 1980s, the hotel carried both faded beauty and a reputation for strange activity. Then restoration began. In 1985, Radisson invested millions to bring back the Spanish colonial revival details, using old plans and photographs to guide the work. Workers repaired rooms, public spaces, and the grand feeling the hotel had almost lost. But in ghost lore, construction can stir up more than dust behind old walls, especially when a famous building has never truly slept. Staff and guests began saying the building felt more active. Elevators moved oddly, cold spots appeared, and stories of Marilyn Monroe, Montgomery Clift, and the little girl Caroline became part of the hotel's public identity. Whether every report was true or not, the restoration seemed to wake the Roosevelt in the imagination of Los Angeles. That is what makes the Roosevelt different from a ruin. It was not abandoned to darkness. It was polished back into beauty. Yet the past did not disappear under fresh paint. It seemed to shine through. At night, the lobby can feel like two hotels at once. The helpful phantoms of the Pantages. Hollywood, 1990s, the Pantages. Theater was still one of the grand jewels of Hollywood Boulevard, a place built in 1930 for lights, music, and applause. By then, the stage had seen vaudeville dreams, movie premieres, Broadway tours, Academy Award nights, and years of restoration work. But some workers believed the building also had older helpers. One night, a wardrobe worker stayed late after a show, finishing her work while the rest of the staff left. Someone, not knowing she was still inside, shut off the lights. Suddenly, the grand theater turned black. Seats, curtains, stairs, and hallways all disappeared around her, and panic began to rise in the dark, quiet backstage. Then she felt a hand take her arm. The touch was gentle, steady, and calm, guiding her through the building toward an exit she could not see. She thought a coworker had found her, but when she reached the door and turned to say thank you, no one stood behind her. The theater was empty, with only the old seats waiting behind her. Some believe the helper was Alexander Pantages, still watching over the house he built. Others think it may be the spirit of a loyal employee who never stopped caring for the stage. Either way, the story gives the Pantages a softer kind of haunting, not a ghost that frightens people, but one that leads them safely back to the light. The playful spirit of little Caroline. Hollywood, 1992. The Roosevelt Hotel had long been known for celebrity ghosts, but one of its most touching stories was not about a movie star at all. During a visit to the Academy Room, psychic Peter James said he encountered the spirit of a little girl named Caroline, about 5 years old. She was said to sing, laugh, and skip through the lobby, acting less like a frightening ghost and more like a child waiting for someone in the dark. Guests and employees have reported seeing a little girl near the public rooms, only to realize no child was there a moment later. Some say she seems to be searching for her mother. In a hotel built for arrivals and departures, that idea feels especially sad because every hallway is made for someone coming back with a suitcase and a smile. The Roosevelt is filled with famous names, but Caroline's legend softens the place. She is not remembered for fame, beauty, or scandal, but for a simple, unfinished hope. When the lobby quiets and footsteps echo near the old ballroom, people still imagine a child turning a corner, singing to herself, Marshall the Friendly Bartender. Hollywood, late 20th century, American Legion Post, stood as one of the city's old gathering places for veterans, performers, and film people near the Hollywood Bowl. The Post was formed after World War I, and its clubhouse later became part of Hollywood's social map, with names like Humphrey Bogart and Clark Gable tied to its long history. Among the friendlier legends of the building is Marshall Wyatt, remembered as a beloved bartender who worked there for years and died peacefully in his 90s. People did not tell his story like a warning. They told it like the memory of a man who knew the regulars, heard every joke, and still liked the room after closing when the glasses were washed. Over time, staff and visitors began reporting small, playful events. Chairs moved when no one touched them. Empty rooms nearby seemed suddenly busy. Film crews working in the building even claimed a helpful older man offered to carry equipment, then disappeared before anyone could ask where he had gone. The name Marshall followed the story. That is what makes this haunting feel unusual for Los Angeles. It has no bitter curse, no scream in the hall, no famous scandal behind it. It feels more like a favorite bartender refusing to leave his post. When the lights are low and the room is quiet, Marshall seems to remain part of the place, keeping watch over one last round for old friends who still might walk in. The Rockhaven Sanitarium echoes. Glendale, 2008. The city purchased Rockhaven Sanitarium in the Crescenta Valley, saving a place with a rare and gentle history from being forgotten. Rockhaven had been founded in 1923 by Nurse Agnes Richards as a peaceful retreat for women at a time when many mental health institutions were cold, crowded, and harsh. The grounds were designed to feel calm. There were gardens, small cottages, trees, and mountain air, instead of prison-like wards. Some people called it the Screen Actors Sanitarium because women connected to Hollywood spent time there. Its history was not perfect, but it was built around dignity. After the city bought the property, much of it sat empty while plans and debates continued. That emptiness helped the ghost stories grow in the quiet buildings. Security guards and cleanup crews reported lights turning on by themselves, clocks changing time without explanation, and a strange piano appearing where only old photographs seemed to remember it. Rockhaven's echoes feel less like terror and more like unfinished care. The place was made for women who needed quiet, rest, and safety, and perhaps that is why its silence feels watched by memory. When wind moves through the old gardens beneath the foothills, it is easy to imagine the past still sitting on the porches, waiting still for the doors to open again and for footsteps to return. The Mystery of Elisa Lam. Downtown Los Angeles, 2013. The Cecil Hotel returned to world attention when 21-year-old Canadian traveler Elisa Lam disappeared while staying there. The building already had decades of dark reputation behind it. But this case unfolded in the age of the internet, when every clue could be replayed, argued over, and shared by strangers everywhere. The elevator video released during the search showed Elisa acting in a strange and troubled way, and it quickly spread across the world. People paused each movement, built theories, and connected her story to the hotel's older legends. But behind the mystery was a real young woman, a daughter and student, whose trip ended in tragedy. Authorities later ruled her death an accidental drowning. That finding did not stop the online speculation, partly because the Cecil already felt like a place where people expected mysteries. Documentaries, articles, and television stories kept returning to the case, sometimes blurring fact and folklore.
If you enjoy this video, please click the like button.
And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
See you in the next one.